Welcome to the Navigating Cancer Together podcast. My name is Talea Dindy. I am a 10-year cancer thriver, cancer doula, and owner of On the Other Side. I use my experience to help others get on the other side of cancer. This podcast is about sharing stories, resources, and information about all things related to cancer and wellness. I interview guests from all walks of life who are living with cancer, caregivers, and those who made it on the other side. Also, I talk with organizations, healthcare professionals, and experts in the health and wellness spaces who offer complementary and integrative care. Join me. We are in this together. Good morning and welcome to Navigating Cancer Together. My name is Talea Dindy and we have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Rosie Paulyk. Thank you, Rosie, so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Rosie Paulyk is the creator of Chronic Oasis, an online community where humans who love and care for chronically ill family members reinforce, remember, or redefine who we are. In her free time, and yes, she has some, she sings jazz, writes essays, writes sassy stories with her beloved and rad Mama S, and entertains her 17-year-old zany cat, Eric. Yes, I said that right. 17-year-old zany cat, Eric. I can't wait to learn more about Eric. So Rosie, again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's just so great to be here. And Eric isn't in here right now, but we'll see what happens. TBD on that.
Great.
We might have a meow or two for you.
All right. We welcome that. So Rosie, let's just kick this off right away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, that intro is, I have to say thank you for that incredible intro, and for getting all of those words flowing and going. Sometimes my ways of describing myself are a little eclectic, but what the heck, I am an eclectic human, as we all are individuals. But yeah, so I am the creator of Chronic Oasis, and that is a love and a project that does not come from an imagined place. I am a caregiver of my beautiful Mama S, who, yes, she does write stories with me. And so the backstory there really is, Mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 10 years old. And at the time of this recording, tomorrow is actually my 31st birthday.
Yay, happy birthday.
So, thank you. So it's been a minute since she's had that diagnosis. And since that diagnosis, she was also diagnosed with clinical depression. And she's borderline for lupus. So that is her sort of the medical background there. And our relationship has evolved a lot over time. When I was a youngster, that's a totally different kettle of fish to where we are now. And so I'll maybe talk a little bit about where things are now. Versus then, but also this is not well known / known publicly at all, but my dad had cancer about 4 years ago. He was diagnosed with melanoma. So yeah, we've got some health stuff going on in this family for sure. So dad is also a caregiver for my mom. I'm an only child, so this is sort of how our family dynamic is playing out. Yeah, that's a little bit about me. I can talk more about how Chronic Oasis came to be if you'd like, or take it wherever you'd like to go from here.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Rosie, for sharing that information. And I just want to touch on, it sounds like there's a lot health-wise that has been going on with your family. You've had to step into different roles, sometimes at a very young age. And I just want to know, how did you handle that physically and emotionally? You have two parents who are having their own health challenges, and here you are, an only child. How did you, I want to say, embrace that in a sense?
Sure. I would say originally there was not a lot of embracing going on and a lot more uh well, I mean, originally it was, for me, it was more of a denial sort of story. And that was when my mom was first diagnosed. And bear in mind, I was 10 years old, so I didn't have really a sense of what was to come fully. And that was a very sort of a moment where the only thought that came to mind was, is my parent going to make it or not? And I couldn't really, I was very young. I couldn't allow that thought, I think, physiologically and mentally to keep rotating. So it was a lot of denial when I was a youngster. But that was the main thought that I had around this, just because we didn't know what the heck was going on. So not so easy there. There was a point in my life almost 6 years ago, where I would say that was again, we're not embracing yet. That comes a little later.
Comes later. I understand.
But up until that time, like, it was sort of more like navigating slowly in a slightly confused manner, just trying to figure out what was going on lifestyle wise. Lots of I guess lifestyle shifts that weren't fully realized. Lifestyle shifts with, but what if this does change? Like, what if I don't have to fully make this lifestyle shift? There's all these other people who appear to be living these very different lives, and I want to be like that, I want that kind of thing. And then 6 years ago, so my mom had a clinical depression diagnosis about 10 years ago. So 6 years ago, she tried to leave here.
Oh.
Yeah. And that is the catalyst for everything that has come since then, for sure. That's where the idea for Chronic Oasis originated. And frankly, as a caregiver, this is where I started to receive the support that I need. It was because of this event. And at that time, I ended up seeking support from my chosen family members, my incredible friends in my life. And I started to develop a community around me. And that's where the embracing bit comes in. It began 6 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, because when you were talking, one of my questions that I had going through my mind was, did you have extended family who was able to kind of help you work through this, especially at 10 years old? Were there any family members or outside support people at that age?
Yeah, so the answer in my case, unfortunately, is no. That is the dynamic of chronic illness is so different in every family. And in mine, the extended family wasn't accepting that there was an actual problem. My mom doesn't look sick.
That dreaded thing right there. Yes. And that just makes it so much harder when you don't look like you're supposed to look when you're, sick. And that just creates so many additional barriers as well.
Yeah. So it would be wonderful to have a different answer for you. I do not. That was my experience as a little Rosie.
All right, Rosie. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm so happy that eventually you were able to get the support that you needed and really, in a sense, create your own community. So I'm happy that that worked out for you because it is
Mhm.
tough. You just think about how your parents are feeling, and then you feel like you're alone. You're trying to understand what is happening. Like you said earlier, you're having all these lifestyle shifts, and you're just trying to get from one day to the next, but
Mhm.
also serve as a caregiver.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, caregivers are not sure what to do. There's no manual on how to be a caregiver. So I just want to applaud you for everything that you've done for your parents and just how wonderful you are in what you've done as a caregiver and continue to do. So great work, Rosie.
Thank you.
And Rosie, of course, you mentioned that you're an only child. So, how
Mhm.
does this affect your relationship with your parents as it pertains to caregiving?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, um, so my dad was diagnosed with melanoma like 4 years ago, and I have to add on that front, he had a wonderful outcome with this. He had two excision surgeries, and currently his checkups are saying that we are doing very well. No
Good,
more cancer has been detected since then.
great.
Yes. Yeah, really good news.
Yes.
Um, I'll get back to the question about the dynamic in a moment. I will say within our family, there's quite a history of cancer. So his monitoring is maybe a little more and has been not aggressive, but has been very intentional for quite some time, just because of our history as a family.
Okay.
But the dynamic is, well, at that time with that diagnosis, I would say unsurprisingly more responsibility shifted to me during that time in terms of the caregiver role. And that how do I feel about that? I feel good about that because my dad needed more time to heal. That was an absolute priority. And so, my dynamic as an only child with my parents has always been different. I don't know what it's like to have siblings. That lifestyle is like, that's over there. It's like, oh, it
Yeah.
sounds good. But I have a very tightly knit relationship with my parents as an only
Good.
child, because of all that we've experienced too. So,
Great, great, wonderful. So, Rosie, I have to ask this very important question. How do you practice self care? What are some of the things that you do to make sure that you're okay?
I think that's a great question. And I think that I don't live, how people, there's a saying that's like, it's a new day. We hear that all the time. Tomorrow's a fresh day. I don't live in that. I
Mhm.
live more like every moment is a fresh moment because 1 hour could look like X and it could be a little rough or a
Mhm.
lot rough. But then the next hour has the potential to look so very different from that first one. So I don't, the idea of going day by day, I have tried that, but things change very quickly sometimes within chronic illness, right? And
Yes.
so I go with moments, and I don't just sort of go with the flow and allow moments to change. I intentionally do things physically to change things up a bit. So, for example, before this interview, I put on this jacket. Like that's a very physical reminder of something fresh is about to happen. It's time to release what was just going on before. And I found for me that kind of visual reminder is really helpful. Um, Also, I'm somebody who I would argue, prior to embracing this lifestyle and sort of customizing it to what is really needed, not what is maybe more broadly available within society.
Yes.
I wasn't spending enough time outside. Honestly, I was holed up, like, holed up, not paying attention to like what my physical body was really asking for at all. Maybe I was paying attention to some of what I needed mentally with, you know, I'm all for receiving coaching and counseling whenever needed. So perhaps that was in sync with what I needed, but the physical stuff, I was just forgetting about it. So getting outside, that is a numero uno. I go for a 30-minute walk every day. I don't miss it unless I am feeling under the weather.
You know, I can relate to what you say about getting outside. Nature and just being outside is very therapeutic. The sun, the sound of the birds, everything. And so that is very important. And a lot of people don't think about that when they are a caregiver because you're so focused on caring for your loved one. But you have to make that time for yourself. And like you said, even if it's a 30-minute walk every day, committing to that and making sure that you are taking care of yourself, that's only going to help you be a better caregiver. So thank you for sharing that with the audience, Rosie.
You're welcome.
And I have another question. I want to talk a little bit about chronic Oasis now. Tell us more about that. You touched on how you came to create Chronic Oasis, but give us a little bit more of what it's about and you know, why it's so important to you.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a secret that I'm going to share right away, right off the hop, because it's the gap that exists within our world right now when it comes to caregiving, and that is that caregivers are only caregivers. That's our identity, and that we frame everything in our lives around that. That is the opposite of what Chronic Oasis exists to do. Yes, caregiving is it's part of our identity. How can we miss that? But there are so many other layers to us and so many other parts of us that that require tending and understanding and honoring. And when we're overwhelmed by caregiving and only focusing on that part of ourselves, the rest can get really lost. That's where the burnout happens. That's where even using the words, the buzzword, if you will, self-care, that doesn't even like resonate with a lot of people, because a lot of caregivers go, what the hell? Pardon my French, but you know, self-care.
What is that?
That's not relevant to me. Like, get real. I got 1 second for that, you know? Really, that is so far away from the focus. But we're not only caregivers, we're also individual people. We're autonomous. We have choices that can be made, and you know, we're living in a society that doesn't recognize this alternative lifestyle. It doesn't see what all it can be, because most people don't experience this. That's how it is. There's millions of us, and yet maybe that's not billions. Maybe that's not everybody. And it's just, yeah, we're having to bend and try to mold ourselves into society, rather than honoring how we can be who we are and be the very best we can be for our loved humans and for our communities. So with that being said, things like, you know, we have conversations around alternative careers. This pandemic, with remote working, this has been incredible for a lot of caregivers, right? This has opened up a new exciting way of living that, like, wow, we could work around this, right? Like,
yes.
you know, this can bend and move to us, not us constantly doing that for others in all areas. Like
Yeah.
that's so incredible, and and so like alternative careers, what are we doing for, our own mental health? What are we doing for recreation? What about the things that we have loved or may be interested in trying, right? People,
Mhm.
when it's funny, like typically the thought to that would be, well, who has time for a hobby? Caregiving, the only identity, right? This is
Yes.
all that I have the time for. But
Yes.
little hobbies, this can change the course of an hour. That could
Yeah.
change, that could flip. The last hour could have been rough, but maybe the next hour is infused with music, with
Mhm.
singing, right? That can shift a lot in the course of an hour or a day or a year. It's all the compound effect of these things, right? So um yeah, this it's a really it's about honoring who we are as whole humans, and including that caregiver part in that.
I love that. And it's so important because you said it. It's like you just hear the word caregiver and some people immediately think about the person that's being cared for
I
by
know.
the caregiver. And it's like, wait, I'm not that you're seeking recognition,
Mhm.
you're doing it from the bottom of your heart for your loved one, but it's like, hey, I need some support too. And that's one of the things that I always say is that caregivers need care too.
Mhm.
And you touched on this as well. Well, when am I supposed to, have time for that? But you really have to carve out that time because you need that downtime, you need that mental break, you need that physical break as well. Um, I want to ask you something. Since you started Chronicle Oasis and you've essentially created a community for yourself,
Mhm.
have you brought on people to help you so that you can take a break? So, for example, when you take your 30-minute walks, is there someone who's kind of on call or on standby in case something happens and you're out for your walk? How do you manage that?
Mhm. So yes, is the answer. That does not look like a healthcare professional right now. That's more part of my
Mhm.
personal circle.
Mhm.
And if we weren't currently in the pandemic, I think that would more so potentially look like, like a respite service. But
Mhm.
there's a very much so a hibernation period that myself and my family are in right now. And I
Sure.
know that many, many others are too. So that looks a little different now. The other thing is choosing when I go to do the walks. Like I know mom's typical sleep patterns,
Mhm.
and so I tend to do that when she's relaxing, and I know that she's going to be staying in one area of the home because mobility is and lack of balance are are pieces that she encounters on the
Sure.
regular now. She's about 95% in her wheelchair at this point. So yeah, I'm just mindful of what are her patterns and how do I embrace those.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Great, great. At least you have a strategy in place and you are giving yourself that time and that space to really just take what you need for yourself. And that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Couldn't agree more.
Mhm. You just touched on how your mom is doing right now. How is your dad doing right now?
Mhm. So he is still in remission, and that is wonderful.
Yes.
He is so I we share, I'm not going to call it the work, we share the responsibility of caregiving.
Sure.
And that will look different as the world changes. Right now, I'm like located right with them, which is great, and we're in the same city. And as the world evolves and things open a little more, that could change. So this caregiving sort of arrangement will look different. What will most likely happen, and I guess I'll just reference back, 31 tomorrow. I'm a youngster.
Yeah.
So this lifestyle choice could be a little bit surprising to some. But what we're looking at will be that mom will be with me for at least 3 months out of the year, and then she'll be with dad for the other time. And that's how we'll work that arrangement once I move out of the area.
Okay. Wow, 31. That's, that's very young to have had this amount of responsibility. And you said it started at 10. So again, I just want to applaud you because at 10 years old, you're just trying to understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then having to step into a position where you are the one providing support in a sense is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm saying this to say, if you could give 10-year-old Rosie 1 or 2 words of wisdom, what would they be?
Mm-hmm. They would be to always remember to focus on what you love, to focus on doing things that you love, to focus on who you love. I would say that because in the future, the person one of the people you love will change quite a bit, but that love doesn't. That part stays exactly the same all the way through. The other part about love is that there are people around you who love you a lot. And you can choose to sort of push, no thanks, I'm fine, I can do this all by myself. You can choose that, and you will actually for a minute. And there will come a time when you don't do that anymore. And you have this wonderful group of people around you who are not there to force you to do anything, to see anything, any type of way, or to suggest that they fully understand what you're going through, because they don't. None of them are actually, in my personal world, nobody's like me, right? Chronic Oasis, of course, that's different, but in the personal world, you can still have this support, and it can be wonderful. And don't be closed off to those people. They actually want to be there.
Great advice for 10-year-old Rosie. I think she would appreciate that.
Yeah.
And this has been such a journey for you. Thank you for everything that you've shared with us today. I know that it can be challenging at times to really open up or even go back to times in our lives when they have been challenging or tough moments and kind of relive those things. But I'm a firm believer that sharing your experiences and your stories help other people. So thank you so much, Rosie. Before we wrap up, do you want to share anything else about Chronic Oasis?
Oh, sure. Well, we are an inclusive, very loving community. We welcome new peeps all the time. And I guess I should say too that Chronic Oasis is free for all caregivers to be part of. It is very specific to chronic caregivers because that does look different than acute caregiving. And it's specific to family caregivers as well. And this is not, when you enter this world, we've got a bunch of people waiting for you to share their stories, their moments where they have, seems like they're going down a certain trajectory and then it changes. Mm-hmm. They're there. We have folks who are sharing about the beginning of their chronic caregiving journeys, the middle, and the end. And so you will find a place for you here. The other thing I will say is this is not heavily laden with medical speak, corporate logos.
I love it. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Manuals like that. This is not what this is at all. We're not a textbook. We're not a case study. We're real people, and that's what Chronic Oasis is about. So.
All right, and that really spoke to me, and I love what you said about this is not medical speak or corporate logos, because that is what you see everywhere, and quite frankly, no disrespect to those things, people in those spaces, but there's something missing from that. And I think that's why Chronic Oasis was started. What I'm doing, that's definitely why I started it. That doesn't fit and work for everyone. And so I'm so happy that you've created Chronic Oasis. Mm-hmm. And it just seems authentic.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I should say, because I guess I mentioned that it's free for all caregivers. A question that people will outright ask me, well, how are you doing that? It's a good question. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you will see a wonderful launch on January 1, 2022. All right. Some incredible worthy vendors who will be on there. And then further into 2022, we'll be doing some sponsorship stuff. But I just don't feel that it's the right call to do a payment for this. Caregivers have to pay for a lot of things in our lives, and I don't think that this kind of connection point should be one of them. And I've had a lot of folks tell me you're wrong, and I say you don't know. So I say I don't care what you think about that. I'm doing what I want with this. So.
That's right. And you birthed this. You birthed this, so you get to do it however you want.
Yeah, totally. So that's it. Come on down. There's lots of places. When you go to chronicoasis.com, there's a lot of different places to join the community, lots of buttons on there. And we're waiting for you and ready.
Wonderful. And I have actually visited Rosie's website. It is wonderful. It's very warm and welcoming. So make sure you check it out. And Rosie, if people have questions, they want to learn more about Chronic Oasis, of course, they can go to the website. Are there other places where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So Chronic Oasis directly, Instagram at Chronic Oasis, Facebook the same. TikTok at the time of this airing, not recording, but airing. And then you'll find within Chronic Oasis that yes, I am present and doing some of the interviews with folks, but more about me that's not the point. We're a community. So if you're curious about me and want to know my take on the world, then you can find me on social media at Rosie Paulyk, pretty much everywhere at I am Rosie Paulyk on TikTok.
All right. Thanks for sharing all of that information. So Rosie, before I end, I ask my guests these same two questions. The first one is, what is something that you've learned in life so far that you would like to share with the listeners?
Sure. Uncertainty is the only true certainty. And it's not scary. It can be full of possibility. And in fact, it always is, because we don't know what's going to happen. There's an excitement around that. Yeah.
I really like that outlook. Yes, because uncertainty can be very stressful for people, especially people that are so used to having everything laid out.
Yeah.
So that is great advice. Think of it as, hey, this can be exciting.
Yeah.
Wonderful. My second question for you is, Rosie, what's next?
That's a great question. So lots going on with chronic Oasis. As I dropped at the time of this recording, it will be okay for me to say that there is a pretty big launch happening on January 1. This will really, 2022, this will really be our big public celebration. We quietly came to be last year, back in 2020, and just been waiting for the time really to do a big public celebration. And there were a few adjustments to get through over the last almost 2 years here. But yeah, as we all know, anybody listening to this knows that. But January 1, 2022, we're gonna have lots of fun. So that is taking up quite a bit of time. And also, what's next for me is focusing throughout the coming months on keeping a balanced and nourished internal state. Without doing that, I think that I know myself well enough to know that is the numero uno priority. The alternative, no. So that's what's next for me.
Great. A lot of exciting things coming your way and for the community. So thank you for sharing that information. And also, Rosie, as we get closer to that rollout, please share that information with me, and I will share it as well. As many people as we can reach, that is the goal.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you again, Rosie, for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And thank you for giving us so much insight into the life of a caregiver.
You're welcome. It was an honor to be here. And, I'm so glad that we connected. Yes. Look, 2021 connections, everyone. We connected on Instagram. So I'm really, really grateful for that, and looking forward to what's to come for both of us too. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosie. And I'm grateful as well. And I just want to point out that we are both introverts. And so that is, really how we kind of formed our connection. And like she said, connections are everything. Instagram is what brought us together. I'm so blessed for that. And Rosie, keep doing all the wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Before we end today, I want to give a shout out to the listeners. Thank you for joining us. That is it for this Wednesday. And until next time, let's keep navigating cancer together. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Navigating Cancer Together. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to subscribe. And if you appreciate the show, drop a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For notes from the show, visit ontheotherside.life and check out the podcast section. After you check out the show notes, head over to my gift shop and show yourself or someone special in your life some love with gifts of encouragement, hope, and positive affirmations. I would love it if you joined us for the next episode. Talk to you soon.